what would happen if gravity disappeared. Have you ever imagined living in a world without gravity? We're not talking about floating for fun, but a scenario where everything, from the oceans to the air we breathe, falls apart. What would happen to our planet and to our bodies? Could we survive, or would chaos take over the universe? Get ready to uncover the devastating impact of a world without this invisible force that holds everything around us together. In this video, we'll explore everything from how the Earth would disintegrate to what would happen to the planets in our solar system. We'll understand why our bodies depend so much on gravity and whether there's any hope of surviving without it, and more. How science is working on creating artificial gravity for space missions and possibly future habitats. Curious? Then stick around until the end, because the answers are so fascinating they'll leave you thinking for days. What is gravity, and why is it essential? Gravity is one of the most important forces in the universe, but did you know it's present in everything around us, even though we can't see it? Think of gravity as an invisible glue that keeps everything in place. It's the force that pulls you toward the ground and prevents you from floating into the air. It's also responsible for keeping planets in orbit around the sun, the moon around the Earth, and even the objects on your desk stationary. But what causes gravity? Everything that has mass, everything that takes up space, exerts gravity. The bigger the mass of an object, the stronger its gravity. For example, Earth has much more gravity than a pencil because it's so much bigger and heavier. This invisible force acts on everything. You, water, air, and even light are influenced by it. Without gravity, the universe would be chaos. Earth would lose its atmosphere because nothing would hold the gases around us in place. Without an atmosphere, we couldn't breathe, and life as we know it would be impossible. Planets wouldn't stay in their orbits and could collide with one another. In short, gravity is like the conductor of a cosmic orchestra, ensuring everything works in harmony. Did you know the moon's gravity is responsible for Earth's tides? It pulls the oceans, creating the rise and fall of the waters. So, the next time you look at the stars or feel your feet firmly on the ground, thank gravity for keeping everything in order. A planet without gravity, what would happen to Earth? Earth, as we know it, would change drastically. For starters, gravity is what keeps our planet round. Without this force, Earth wouldn't be able to maintain its spherical shape. The materials that make up the planet, rocks, magma, and water, would scatter into space. It would be as if Earth disintegrated into pieces. Additionally, without gravity, what keeps the oceans in place? The water in seas and rivers would break free, forming massive floating bubbles. This wouldn't just end marine life, but also eliminate our access to drinking water. Without gravity, the atmosphere, a layer of gases surrounding our planet, would also escape. The oxygen and air we breathe would disperse into space. Another impact would be the disintegration of Earth's core, which generates the planet's magnetic field. Without gravity, this liquid iron core wouldn't spin the same way. The magnetic field would vanish, leaving Earth vulnerable to solar radiation and charged particles from space. Imagine Earth within the solar system. Without gravity, it wouldn't remain in orbit around the sun, but would shoot off in a straight line through space, like a stone being thrown. This would cause drastic temperature changes since we'd be far from the heat source that keeps us alive. A world without gravity wouldn't just be a strange place. It would be completely hostile to life. Earth depends on this force to maintain balance, from the shape of the continents to the existence of the atmosphere we breathe. Life on Earth, what would happen to people? If gravity suddenly disappeared, life on Earth would be completely transformed, and not in a good way. Imagine that in an instant you started floating, like astronauts in the International Space Station. Without gravity, nothing would hold us to the ground, and everything around us, objects, animals, and plants, would also start to float. Now, think about the air we breathe. Gravity keeps it close to Earth's surface. Without this force, the air would disperse into space and we'd soon run out of oxygen. This means that, in addition to floating uncontrollably, we wouldn't even be able to breathe. Another problem would be the lack of weight on our bodies. Our muscles and bones rely on gravity to stay strong. In a zero-gravity environment, our bodies would quickly lose muscle mass and bone density. Studies on astronauts show that, in microgravity conditions like in space, the body can lose up to 1% of bone density per month. Imagine the impact if this happened to the entire population simultaneously. Additionally, our bodies would undergo internal changes. Blood, for example, which gravity pulls toward our legs, would redistribute differently, accumulating in the chest and head. This could cause facial swelling, headaches, and even heart problems. Simple things like drinking water or eating would become enormous challenges. Water wouldn't pour into a glass, and food wouldn't stay on a plate. Even sleeping would be difficult, as you'd float instead of lying comfortably in bed. Without gravity, living on Earth would be like trying to survive in space without preparation. Even for a short time, the consequences for our bodies and lifestyle would be devastating. Oceans and climate, chaos. Without gravity, Earth's oceans would be among the first to experience the devastating effects. The water, usually held in place by gravity, would begin to drift away from the planet's surface. Instead of waves and seas, we'd see massive floating bubbles of water spreading uncontrollably. What would happen if gravity disappeared? These bodies of water could eventually escape into space, leaving Earth completely dry. Without oceans in place, the water cycle would collapse. There would be no evaporation, cloud formation, or rain. Rivers and lakes would dry up, making survival impossible for any life form dependent on water. The climate, influenced by the interaction between oceans, the atmosphere and gravity, would spiral out of control. Moreover, gravity is fundamental to keeping Earth's atmosphere attached to the planet. Without it, the gases that make up the air would begin to disperse into space. This means we would lose the oxygen we breathe and the protective layer against solar radiation. The planet's temperature would also fluctuate wildly, since the atmosphere would no longer regulate the heat from the sun. Ocean currents, driven by gravity and responsible for distributing heat around the globe, would cease to exist. Regions dependent on these currents for mild temperatures, such as Europe, would experience drastic and immediate climate changes. The frozen poles would also melt rapidly, contributing further to the chaos. Without gravity, the interaction between the climate and oceans would vanish entirely. Our planet, reliant on this delicate balance to sustain life, would become completely uninhabitable in no time. The solar system without gravity. The solar system as we know it would collapse immediately. Gravity is what keeps planets orbiting the sun in precise paths. Without this force, planets, moons, and other celestial bodies would simply move in straight lines, following the direction they were traveling at the moment gravity turned off. Without the sun's gravitational pull, Earth would stop orbiting its source of heat and light, drifting aimlessly through space. Over time, the planet would move so far away that it would freeze completely, as the sun is the primary source of energy maintaining our temperature. Life on Earth, already struggling with other issues, would become impossible within days. Natural satellites, such as the Moon, would also escape their orbits. The Moon, which plays a crucial role in tides and stabilizing Earth's axis, would float off into space, and without it, the planet's natural cycles would be destroyed. Asteroids and comets, also kept in specific positions by gravity, would begin to drift uncontrollably, increasing the risk of catastrophic collisions with Earth and other planets. The entire solar system, once an orderly system, would descend into absolute chaos. Gravity and the human body. How would we be affected? The human body would face immediate and frightening changes. For starters, our muscles and bones, which rely on gravity to stay strong, would weaken rapidly. Astronauts in NASA, microgravity lose up to 1% of bone density per month. Imagine this happening to the entire population at once. The cardiovascular system would also suffer. Without gravity, blood and other bodily fluids, which are normally pulled toward the lower parts of the body, would accumulate in the head and chest. This would cause facial swelling, headaches, and even strain on the heart. Simple activities like eating or drinking would become extremely difficult. Food wouldn't move down the esophagus, and water would form floating bubbles. Additionally, without gravity keeping our organs in place, they could shift positions, causing discomfort and functional problems. The human body is designed to live with gravity. Without it, our physical and even mental health would be at risk, as we would completely lose our sense of orientation and balance. Could we live without gravity? It would be extremely challenging, but science is already studying solutions for environments like space. One idea is to create artificial gravity using centrifugal force. For example, a ring-shaped space station could rotate, simulating gravity by pushing occupants against its walls. Another alternative would be advanced technology to recreate Earth-like conditions, such as systems to maintain bone and muscle health, which astronauts already use. Additionally, plants could be grown in controlled environments to produce oxygen and food. However, these systems are complex and limited. Without natural gravity, health issues, mobility difficulties, and even psychological challenges would be major obstacles. For now, living without gravity is only feasible for short periods, like during space missions, but science is working to make it more viable in the future. Did you enjoy learning what a world without gravity would be like? Then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss more fascinating content like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you suddenly started floating? See you in the next video.